So now prospects for the 2024 election are becoming more shaky than ever. Now, since Colorado has ruled that Trump cannot be on the Colorado ballot, there's talk of it going to the Supreme Court. And what will the Supreme Court do? A very good question, very concerning, because whenever it has to come down to that, um, it's there's a lot of anxiety that it causes the states, because if Trump were to be barred from the Colorado ballot and the Supreme Court rules in their favor, then it would set a precedent which would allow states like Michigan, Minnesota, Arizona, and now another 16 possible states to also take him off the ballot, which would definitely destroy his chances of becoming the next president of the United States. But and I want people to understand that this is you have to break down an argument like this. Whenever you hear insurrection, threat to democracy, you have to break down the conversation, the argument, into bite-sized pieces. What do you mean by insurrection? What do you mean by breakdown democracy? Most normal people, most of the masses, they have, I mean, statistically low IQ, number one. Number two, their interests don't lie in politics, so they're not abreast on some of these issues or how to argue, techniques of rhetoric, argumentation. They're not up to speed on those concepts. And the left uses, I mean, the right too, but the left, especially nowadays, have become sophists. They can convince you, or they try to convince you of anything by changing things such as argumentative definition. Because if we don't have the same argumentative definition, then we will not come to the same conclusion, and we might as well not even talk to each other. So we have to first analyze base principles about the argument in order to move forward. And this doesn't surprise me. I mean, the situation of our country is in this place because we're living out the end of a Christian society, a Judeo-Christian moral society that was built, that peaked roughly the Middle Ages, became corrupt around the Renaissance, and since the late 18th century with the French Revolution, modernist principles, modern philosophy. Do we know anything? Kant said, all we know is space and time. You know, all these destructive philosophies that break down our reliance on objective truth. Objective truth is how we come to the conclusions that about law that are fair. We have to have objective principles and objective conclusions about morality, things like that. But our whole modern world and our society is built against that. It's subjective. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? There's no objective reality, even though we use objective truth on a daily basis for things like going to work, building a bridge. Things are objective. But I digress. The Supreme Court has a tough decision, and this article from the Denver Post kind of sums up my sentiment, at least. Here, this would be a historic case, to say the least, if the justices ruled directly on whether Trump is disqualified under the Constitution. Their ruling would apply in every state, not only Colorado. And and there's a lot of potential energy with that statement, because if there's perception of unfairness, the people will lose confidence in the election system. And when that happens, all hell will break loose. Because that is the thing, and I've always said this, that binds our nation together, is the perception of fairness. And it's like the stock market. If there's high consumer confidence, the stock market does well. If there's low consumer confidence, the stock market falls. Same thing too with the election system. You have to and no one knows the breaking point, because it's not an object. It's a percentage of the people at any given moment. And at any point it could break. And when it breaks, there's war. There's a lot of potential energy. And then that would cause, in my view, the military to do something. They would have to step in and separate the two fighting children. And I think the military overall is apolitical. I mean, I've seen some studies that say 38% could identify as conservative. Some say 42%. And I don't know if it wasn't party affiliated, but it was identified as conservative. So I don't know which way the military leans. I know I heard some things where the generals tend to be more conservative, but they don't want to get involved. But they will be forced to if the perception of fairness takes and the people takes over, and they will have to side with the majority because their concern is peace and stability. So a lot of potential energy in the situation. But what does the High Court have? The Supreme Court of the United States. What are their options? Well, first they could claim that the lower court does not have the authority to bar Trump from the ballot, and that's true in the Constitution, Section 1, Article 1, Section 3. The states shall determine the time, places, and matter of the elections, but the federal government can override those regulations, and they may do that here. They may do that here, or the Supreme Court could override that. So they will just simply say the lower court doesn't have the authority to do that. Then second, there's a instance involving an earlier case from Samuel P. Chase in 1869, where he said that the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, that keeps insurrectionists from holding office, doesn't go into effect until Congress passes a law providing for its execution, which it has not done. But it's likely the Colorado court will reject this because they see it's a poor reading. They did reject this because they saw it as a poor reading of the 14th Amendment because its other sections don't seem to require congressional action to go into practice. Will the Supreme Court reject that case? We don't know. They may. I think the best option for the Supreme Court in this case, if they were to go to the Supreme Court, would be to just declare that Trump is not an officer of the United States. In the Colorado court held that that he could be considered an office. He could be considered an officer of the United States. So, but and this once again, breaking down the argument, they're saying that Trump engaged in insurrection, and that the Section 3 of the 14th Amendment would bar him as an insurrectionist. And what people today don't understand and don't know how to do is go back to the definition, go back to the source. What are we arguing here? This Denver Post and other media outlets, they might say he is an insurrectionist. So, what is an insurrectionist? Well, first let's look at insurrection. An act or instance of revolting against civil authority or an established government. Okay, that's good. What about revolt? What do you mean by revolt? To renounce allegiance or subjection. Okay, so the act of revolt, they're claiming that January 6th was an act of revolt, therefore insurrection. He was there, and this is twofold, because he said that the 2020 election was invalid, which is his constitutional right, and he went to the Capitol, and there was a riot. Even though so number one, 2020 election, you can question that. That is protected in the Constitution. That's freedom of speech. I can say the election did not happen. Like it never happened, and it doesn't cause harm because that's that's an institution of the United States that's in the public domain. It's open to public scrutiny. And number two, he went to the Capitol and he gave a speech and said we will go peacefully protest, which is his right to do, and to practice your First Amendment right to go to the Capitol peacefully. He said that. And then when the hidden FBI agents started the riot, he said, go home. on Facebook. He broadcasted that. That is not the actions of an insurrectionist. Like I said in an earlier video, the insurrectionist would say, "Okay, we are in the Capitol, occupy it," and then he would appeal to the military authority to come in and to secure that location, and then set himself up as king, president, whatever you want. That is historically how an insurrection happens. He said, "Go home, give up high ground." Okay, there's no question. Objectively, he is not an insurrectionist. So yeah, we will have to see what happens. Once again, a symptom of a spiraling situation, a degenerating society. We have to, as a people, we have to start caring about the principles, of the objective principles. That's an important point. We're working against modernism here. Modernism, one of the principles of one of the precepts of modernism is moral relativism. Okay, so there's no shared morality. So if I can lie, cheat, and steal to get Trump put in prison, I can do that. And and also narcissistic hedonism is another precept of modernism, which was mid 19th century. It coincided with the Industrial Revolution. So the more we're making at that point, the more we're making manufactured products, and more middle class people are making money. Oh, lo and behold, we're also coming up with narcissistic hedonism. We're also being narcissistic hedonists who believe in sensual pleasure as highest priority, or as Aristotle would say, chief good, which is a disaster waiting to happen. And we don't have to wait anymore, because this is a symptom of it. It's going to continue to spiral out of control and affect people who, for long periods of time, had ignored politics. Oh, that's not for me. Oh, the parties are the same, or let's not look into this, or I don't want to have to, do this or that regarding morality. I want to make up my own truth. This is the result of that type of behavior. So, yeah, we shall see. But I have a feeling that it's going to get worse. But I pray and hope that it doesn't.